Happy New Year!
Same old intro.
Yeah. That's okay. I'm just...
Do you think we'll be able to be outside around people in 2021 again?
I hope so. I hope so. You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hello, welcome to Talk Heathen! Today is January 3rd, 2021. It is season 5, episode 1.
The premiere.
Yeah, the season premiere, that's right. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Vi La Bianca.
How's it going?
Good, it's going good.
Good. It's I know we took a little hiatus for a little bit. We had a special holiday message right around New Year's.
You're right.
And then we had our holiday special before
Which
that.
people just loved.
Yeah, people are like, this is not the format. Well, we know it's the holiday special, but we are happy to be back, and we are happy to see all of you. I'm just watching the live chat and watching everybody come in, and it just feels good. It does. Before we dive into calls, though, because we do have a couple good callers in here that I'm excited about, we do have a couple of announcements. Mm-hmm. So the regular announcement is Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin. The ACA is a 501c3 nonprofit. If you like what we do and you want to support us, please consider becoming a patron. You can go to patreon.com/talkheathen to me. That's patreon.com/talkheathen to me. And before you hop there, though, we do have another thing right after this. So stick with me, because there's actually a fundraiser that Black Nonbelievers is doing.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so they are hitting their 10th anniversary.
Nice.
And they prepared a little video. Could we pop that video up and show people what we mean?
Hi, everyone. Mandisa Thomas here, asking you to join the atheist community of Austin in supporting Black Nonbelievers, also commonly known as BN. In case you are not already familiar with us, Black Nonbelievers is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Headquartered in the Atlanta, Georgia area, we connect with other Blacks and allies who are living free of religion by providing a caring, friendly, and informative environment. Instead of accepting dogma, we determine truth and morality through reason and evidence. The mission of Black Nonbelievers is to provide secular fellowship, nurture and support nonbelievers in coming out, i.e. open identification, promote pride in the atheist and secular identities, and organize members for a variety of events and charitable causes. Black Nonbelievers welcomes all regardless of age, gender identity, sexual identity, national origin, and racial identity. 2021 will mark our 10th year of building community, increasing the representation of the Black non-religious demographic, and advocating for true liberation. And we need you to help us continue and expand on our work. For more information, please visit our website at blacknonbelievers.org. Also, please do follow and subscribe to us on social media at Facebook at Black Nonbelievers, Instagram at B Nonbelievers Inc., Twitter at B Nonbelievers, the B and the N are capitalized, and YouTube at Black Nonbelievers Inc. Finally, we hope that you will join us either in person or online for our major events, including our 10th anniversary celebration, which will take place from January 15th through the 17th in New Orleans. You can register to attend virtually for only $5, and of course, we hope that you will consider a support donation to help make this one of the best hybrid events of the year. We will also be co-hosting the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference in September in Chicago, Illinois, as well as BNCCon, our cruise convention in November, which sails out of Miami, Florida. All safety and social distancing protocols will be followed. So please donate to the link you see below and do continue to support the work of the ACA. Welcome to 2021, and I hope that we all have a great year.
All right.
Awesome.
So, if you haven't checked out Black Non-Believers, well, welcome to Talk Heathen. I know we've had Mandisa on quite a few times, and Mandisa has made appearances on all of our other shows.
And I believe she will be again.
Yeah. So check them out. It is a worthy cause, and we really, really appreciate just the partnership and the volunteering. So thank you. That said, let's see. What other announcements do we have? Happy New Year.
Do you have any resolutions this year? Any goals?
Yes. I resolve to... You know what? I think I'm going to do a new look next week.
A new look?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, I just want to grow this community. I want to hit 100,000 subscribers. How about that? Can we do that?
I like that one. That's good. I
What
like
about
the new
you?
look too idea, but
Yeah?
I know a lot of people are probably, please don't cut the hair.
I can
please
shave
don't
my
cut the hair."
head.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
There you
but
go.
people
That'll
will
be
love
fun,
that.
right? Yeah.
What about you?
Oh God, too many.
Okay. Any you want to share?
Just making some changes. I think I'm a little too addicted to my phone, so I'm gonna make a plan to stop looking at phones from 10 p.m. on.
I am actually really in favor of that.
It probably won't last more than a week, but I'm gonna give it a college try.
Okay. Oh, well, I'll help. Let's see. So the only other thing I think is things might sound a little bit different, and that's because we needed to make some adjustments for this weekend, so we're sharing a mic.
Yes.
But that's about it. You ready to dive into calls?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We had Sigmund call in and has been waiting on the line for about an hour already.
Awesome. Well, thanks for calling in early, Sigmund.
Yeah, Sigmund, what would you like to talk about?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys, and a happy New Year, Merry Christmas, of course, to everyone of you. I hope you guys have had a nice Christmas and a New Year.
Some lovely,
We did.
quiet, chill. It was lovely. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We cooked together and made a drink and enjoyed it from home.
Oh.
Yes, we were being very
wow.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit different. Yeah. Okay, so
So is that-
I wanted to call in and talk about couple of things, I guess. But
Sure.
first of all, obviously, like usually when I have like philosophical discussions, right, atheism is generally defined kind of differently. It's not that I hate your definition. I'm just saying that generally, for practical purposes, it's much easier when atheism is a position than when it's just an absence.
I'm sure it is for you.
Personal. Sorry, what?
I'm sure it is for you.
Yeah. What's
No,
interesting
I'm
is
saying in general it's easier, but I mean I have no problem with any other definition. I don't think it's like it's a semantic problem. It's not like a philosophical problem. So instead of like calling in and saying that atheism is self-defeating, and then having to defend something like how can a private psychological state be self-defeating, I would like to talk about other views that you guys seem to positively hold instead of having absence of. And let's see if that ties into why you are secularists or atheists. Does that sound fair?
so you're going to bring up a position, see if we agree with it, and if we do agree with it, why?
Well, I think that there's a couple of other positions that you do hold positively, right?
that's
As
an
opposed to like
interesting-
having an absence of, right?
That's
Is
an
that
interesting switch on Talk Heathen. Usually we want to ask what the callers believe and why. So let's do a quid pro quo. You ask us a question and then we'll ask you.
Okay, I'm a Christian myself. I think I told that to the call screener. Yeah. Okay. So like, my question is, you guys seem to hold. I mean, I'm not as certain because I think I saw Eric talk about this once. I'm not sure I've seen V, but you guys seem to hold to some form of naturalistic philosophy. Would that be correct?
Well, if we're going against the philosophical versus colloquial definitions, then we want to make that distinction here. I would not call myself a philosophical naturalist. I am a methodological naturalist. So that's the distinction
that's
there.
fair. Okay, good. All right. So so that's what I wanted to get out of the way. So my next question would be, as I guess methodological naturalism, how do you avoid, let's say, something like determinism? Like how do you get out of determinism?
They're not mutually exclusive.
Also,
Well,
we don't
think they are.
necessarily
I don't
get out
think
of
they
it.
are.
Yeah, I don't.
You would say you hold to determinism.
Not necessarily. I don't think I have enough information either way, but I'm not diametrically opposed to it.
Okay. So, but I do think that the problem comes up with this, right? Because it seems like a lot of naturalists don't have a way to get out of determinism. As in,
why do we need to?
Well, because determinism seems to entail something like lack of free will because of the consequence argument and the no forking paths argument.
But isn't so? Let's slow down just a little bit. That sounds like an appeal to consequences. If
No,
determinism, if naturalism, then no free will. It doesn't actually invalidate it. It just means that okay, we've got more to think about. But I have no problem with the idea that I have no free will.
Yeah, but the problem, of course, is that without free will, you would have no agency, right? And without agency, you can't hold any beliefs.
That's not true.
What is not true?
So it depends on how you understand and talk about agency. If you're defining agency as something that inherently has free will, then no, because I obviously disagree with that idea.
What's the distinction? What's the distinction that can be drawn between agency and free will?
Sure. So when you're talking about free will, colloquially, generally, it's kind of this libertarian view of free will that we have this ability to make choices and choose between one thing and another versus, I think, your autonomy, right? We were talking about autonomy?
Agency.
Agency.
So we were talking about agency, yeah.
Okay. I think that one could.
How can you be an agent? How can you be an agent without the principle of alternative possibility?
Well, I think that we're testing for that with the Turing test all of the time. I think that you can effectively have what we would describe as agency and manufacture it. We're on our way to getting there. I don't think that we're some special, thing. I think that we're meat machines essentially. So who cares?
I don't also, here's the thing that I don't understand about this argument is, can you fly, Sigmund? Can you jump off a building and fly?
No, I can't.
Okay, that is you cannot do that. You are determined not to do that, right? Does that impose on your free will? Like the fact that we cannot.
That's not determinism, though. That's not determinism.
Well, I realize that I'm making an analogy here. I'm saying that because... No, it's
not a good analogy because determinism is the thesis.
I know what determinism is. I'm not talking about determinism right now. I'm talking about the idea of agency and free will. You do not have the agency to fly. Does that impose on your free will?
The idea of not having agency to fly is not a coherent thing, right? Agency is the abstract principle of autonomous beings.
Coherent. I've read Superman comics.
Yeah. No.
Well,
how are you defining agency then?
Agency is the abstract principle that autonomous beings are capable of acting by themselves.
Well.
Okay.
Well,
how on earth does that?
You think that?
How does that impose? How is that opposed to determinism? If everything that is determining your actions is held within yourself, you're reacting to your internal and external stimuli autonomously. Therefore, you have agency.
No. Let me explain, right? Determinism is the thesis that all events are caused by antecedent conditions, okay? So as von Inwagen shows by the consequence argument, since quote-unquote agents don't actually have control over neither the laws of nature nor the antecedent conditions, they can have no control, I guess, over the consequences that those conditions bring about.
Whoa! Stop! Right there. Let's say we live in a world where there's absolutely no free will and somebody's walking around killing people. Are you saying they do not have, that there should be no consequences for that person because they don't have free will?
Okay, this is just equivocation, right? Consequences, you're just equivocating on the colloquial consequence versus the consequence that any effect brings when we talk about methodology, right? So, for example,
so give me an example.
okay, the consequence of an action is something like me dropping it on the computer and the computer as a consequence of the action breaking. That's what I mean. So what Van Inwagen argues is that if there is no forking path, basically, according to determinism, right, you couldn't have done otherwise on any of the.
It's just a line of
on
dominoes.
any of the choices.
Keep going. But
yeah. Basically, I think Eric gets it. So the problem is if we negate the principle of alternate possibility, right? And
Sigmund,
it seems like, yeah.
I got a quick question for you.
Yes.
Is Sigmund your real name?
How is that relevant to what I'm trying to explain?
Well, I just want to know if this is the same person who called in as Canadian Catholic using a different name.
No,
because
I don't understand, right? I mean, I'm just trying to explain a hard concept, and I'm being interrupted for unrelated reasons. Like, you surely should understand the frustration I must be feeling, right? Because
So
I'm
I'll
trying
take
my
that as
best
a
to
yes.
explain a complicated concept.
Is that a
and you're
yes?
just stopping
I'd
me
say
and
that's a
asking
yes.
questions about- I don't understand what the relevance of my name is, right? So why can't you engage with the arguments?
Here's
So-
the thing, Sigmund. We want to make sure that we are promoting honest conversations. And a really good way to determine if somebody is an honest interlocutor is if they are honest with our call screeners and they're honest with us about who they are, so we can continue conversations with that basis of knowledge of that person. There are people who call in and we have a continuing dialogue with them because we know that they have called in before. Calling in under different names and pretending to be different people is dishonest and throws your argument under the bus a little bit.
Yeah. If you lived in a third world country and it was important for your safety, then that's understandable.
That's just a genetic fallacy, right? I was in the middle of an argument and you stopped me at an unrelated point. And now I lost.
How many times have we had arguments with you, Sigmund? Multiple times. And you keep calling in with different ideas and you never repeat our conversations. You never come back to previous points. So I really don't see a point in continuing conversations with you because you're just going to call in another week with something completely different under another name.
Yeah. I mean,
you can't
really, for me, the thing is it feels like you come in with an onion and we keep peeling back layers, but we never actually address the underlying assumptions. And the underlying assumptions, if I were to respond to today, is that the idea of free will is bad, right? Or no, sorry,
No,
the idea that we don't have free will is bad.
And therefore, we cannot be naturalists because for some reason here's the thing. It would be an interesting conversation if I could trust that we would be able to continue it with you next week, but I can't do that. So we may have to let you go. If you want to keep calling in under the same name and continue a conversation with us, feel free to do that. But we've been pretending we haven't been recognizing you for the sake of, being polite, but we've noticed that you called in over and over. The audience knows. We all know at this point. So maybe it's best just to be upfront, put our cards on the table, and maybe call back next week with your real name or a name you want to stick to, and we can continue these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's chickening out, right? I mean, you're just getting cornholed and you're just chickening out of the conversation, right? I mean,
feel free to think that if it makes you feel better.
That's cute.
Bye, Sigmund.
You know what I noticed? Calls worth having don't have pejorative statements like that,
Here's the thing. We were trying to have a decent conversation and we try, every once in a while someone might call in, they forgot the name that they used last time, they don't want to use their real name, that's fine. But if you consistently call into the show under different names, that makes us doubt if you're really willing to have a good conversation with us. We want to build these relationships. We have people call in again and again, and we walk with them through their process of thinking these things out. If you're going to call in and just pretend you've never heard of us, and we've caught you in a lie before, right? You've been like, oh, I've never called the show. Come on.
Well, he didn't do that this time. He didn't
Not
do that
this time.
And really, ultimately, some conversations, the format is such that you can sit down for hours and hours and hours and work things out. But the way this is positioned is some kind of gotcha. And really, we want to talk with people. We want to engage with them. We're bringing ourselves to the conversation. We want to make sure that the other people are too.
Right.
And it's not just this stack of, but
also, before we jump into another call, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, I'm a methodological naturalist. I believe you are too. And the only way that you could debunk naturalism by saying it requires determinism is by doing two things. First, demonstrate that that is true, that naturalism requires determinism. And then two, demonstrate conclusively that determinism is not what we experience. And then you have a solid case. But until you can do both those things, that's an argument from consequence. That's saying, I don't want to believe that I live in a deterministic world. I like imagining that I have free will and agency in the way I define it. And therefore, you can't be right. And that is just a bad argument. And I don't care how many 5-syllable, 6-syllable words you throw out at me. It's still a bad argument.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That actually makes me want to do at some point, we're going to need to screen the story of Anywhere USA or Anytown USA. It is a wonderful, wonderful old animation that kind of goes over some of those ideas, or it's a good jumping off point anyway. You ready to move on to the next call?
Let's move on.
All right. Let's go with Adam in Texas. Adam, you're live with Eric and V.
Hello
Adam?
there. How are y'all this evening? Or this
Doing
afternoon?
all right.
We're doing good.
Yeah, where are you at, man?
I am in North Texas, almost Oklahoma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Nice.
I've probably driven through then. Very cool.
Well, thanks for calling in. What can we help you with today?
Yeah.
So, well, first of all, I wanted to say, Vi, I really resonated with your story I listened to recently, your conversion story. So it resonates with me a lot. Secondly, the main thing would be, I believe that the old covenant slavery system is actually better than the prison slavery system that we have today.
It sounds like you're conflating slavery with imprisonment.
Right.
Yeah. That's not a thing.
Well,
those are different.
I don't know. I could say that modern day slavery in the U.S. is imprisonment in the U.S. is similar to slavery in a lot of ways.
Sure. I mean, I think that we need to do a better job, but it's still conflating two different things. You have some.
They're two entirely different structures.
Yeah, you have a human being being owned as property, and in lots of slavery systems, including the one in the United States and in the Bible, you have people and their children being owned as property, and you also understand that these people are not being viewed as humans, right? Even in prison, yes, we'll take away some rights like the right to own a gun. But we still treat them as a human being. We want to.
I have lots of feelings about the prison system in the U.S.
I do too, but
that's getting in the way of this.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to cut to the chase with you, Adam, and say that I might agree that how they decided to use indentured servitude for other Hebrews at the time is better than some of the prison systems in the U.S. But I do not agree that what they did to outsiders is better. And that was just as condoned as indentured servitude of fellow Hebrews.
Yeah.
So that's my take on that.
Why do you say that? Why do you say
because
that the way they would treat outsiders is worse than what we've got now?
I don't understand. Hold on. Where's this conversation going? Is this a conversation to prop up the idea that the Bible is a moral book?
Yes.
Okay, so you think the Bible is moral?
But if it's...
Yes, I'm a theist.
Those are two different things, my friend.
We've actually specifically gone over a type of theism that we've been studying, process theology. Yeah.
Guys, if any of you are process theologians or interested in that,
please call.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Sorry, Adam. Adam, here's the thing. You can, even if we were to agree for the sake of the argument that what is in the Bible is better than what we have now in certain situations, why on earth would that make that equal that the Bible is moral? I could say that hitting someone is better than killing them, but I'm not going to condone hitting people as a good thing to do.
Yeah, I
misspoke, I guess. I'm not arguing that slavery or in the Bible makes the Bible moral. I think that the reason that it's moral is based on something more fundamental.
Okay, so why are we talking about slavery?
That's just what I wanted to call in and talk about.
Okay, well, I'm willing to grant for the sake of this conversation that certain things in the Bible are probably better than certain things that exist today. Certainly there were no atomic bombs in the Bible. It means that the Bible is in that way better because we didn't have the capacity to kill millions of people. But that to me doesn't translate to anything other than cool, I guess there were some things that were better and some things that were worse at different time periods. And I'm not sure how that ties into your ultimate point, which I'm assuming has to do with proving either the veracity of the Bible or God or something. So what's the end goal for you here?
Well, I'm what I guess what you call a presuppositionalist.
Oh. Well, I think you're the first precept to start with a slavery argument.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combo right there.
Oh,
It's
cheers.
like
I guess there's a
half iced tea, half lemonade.
You know what? I kind of got a craving for that.
Yeah, right?
Arnold Palmer on
I got one.
the Talk Heathen show.
Yeah, we didn't want to openly endorse an alcoholic beverage, so we kind of put a little tape, which actually was kind of a nice grip.
It's a good kind of nice grip. Sorry, continue.
Well, yeah. So the presuppositional argument, so I'm not using this argument to show that the Bible is moral. I think it's moral just based on its own merits. Like it's a self-authenticating argument. The slavery system is just a natural result of it being good.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting claim.
Yeah. So hold on a second. You're saying the Bible validates itself, which makes it true. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Cool. Where's my book of Eric?
It's over there.
It's right here. Oh, here it is. My book says that it's true. It says everything written in this book is true. So does that mean that everything in my book is true?
Not necessarily. We would have to look.
But it says so.
And we would also have to agree on what's the correct result.
Well, it says 2 plus 2 equals 4.
That it is, and well, there's a difference between the reason that something is true and also how we know that it is true.
I agree. Okay, so if we were to evaluate my book and it says 2 plus 2 equals 4, and then we look at the claim that everything in this book is true, hey, we'll agree, right? Cool. Okay, also in this book, it says that I created the universe. Would you still agree that everything in this book is true?
Well, we would examine the fruits of that. So if you created the universe, then you get to determine how it runs.
No, you don't.
We would look at
Not necessarily. I mean, so imagine an entity that simply all it can do is poof a universe into existence. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. Then no, that entity would not have control over the universe. It wouldn't have to, it wouldn't be making moral decisions. It would just poof a universe into existence. The thing is, you're carrying a lot of assumptions that are attached to your God, to the idea that a universe creating entity would need to have those, which I think is where we're going to be breaking down. There's an assessment of what those things would be that we're just not in agreement with. And I think that's where we're going to having an issue.
Okay, I guess you misunderstand me. I don't think that something that creates the universe necessarily has to have laws for it. I'm just saying that's the way that the beings that are created within that universe would know who the creator is. If that makes sense.
Well, I wrote them a book
based on his work.
It's right here. No, they got a book. It's right here.
But they don't see any. Well, in that sense, I guess it would be self-evident to them that they are made things. Ah,
so then I am God.
Also, if he says, hey, I'm going to create a thing called pizza and it is good and it will be called pizza and pizza exists, that's proof that he created the universe, right? Because they can see the fruits of his work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that one of the ways that we know that a being exists is by examining the things that it does.
So no, I actually,
Well, yes, but first we have to determine whether the
That-
being exists.
Yeah.
And then we can say, okay, what kind of being is this? And what does it do? And where does it live? And what does it eat, right? We can do that. But first and foremost, we have to determine that the thing exists before we can study it.
Yeah. And just as an example, if we were to be talking about whether or not a lawnmower exists, yes, we can look at the mowed lawn and things like that. But if we're talking about that lawnmower, bring in the lawnmower. You need to show that it exists. Otherwise, how do I know that you weren't sitting out on your lawn with scissors? It's just, you can show that the lawnmower exists without having to turn it on.
Right. The difficulty comes when now it's the lawnmower trying to determine whether somebody made it or not.
No, in our analogy, the lawnmower is God. And
Yeah.
what we're determining is whether or not the lawnmower exists by the fact that the grass got cut. It might be sheep.
Well, you can just go.
It might be somebody with a
direction too.
Well, yeah, it could go either direction, but this is the direction we're going. I guess my question for you, Adam, is
Then it would be the grass.
in any other situation, do you use this kind of logic? Do you use this kind of logic to determine a thing because the thing itself said it? It's circular. And I know for a fact that you can't go through life like that, or you're going to get into some real trouble. You're open to scams and con artists and probably, basic things like math. Like all of that's going to be a problem for you if you use circular logic elsewhere. So why is it okay here?
It's because when you get to the top of the truth chain, I suppose, like why does this? Because this, why is this? Because this. Like when you go backwards all the way up that, when you finally get to the end, it's that thing looping back on itself.
Actually, it's I don't know. You loop it back on itself when you don't have a better answer. But Descartes got it wrong. It's I don't know. That's the honest response.
Or he was also a presuppositionalist in the famous "I think, therefore I am." He assumed I think. Well, how do you know it's you that's thinking?
That is an awesome conversation for another day. But just responding here, does that help? It doesn't necessarily loop back on itself. It winds up getting to a place of I don't know, and that's good. There's a word for it, aporia.
Well, I think at least that's honest. But the person that says I don't know can't necessarily say that he knows that somebody else doesn't know.
Well, then it is important for the person who says they know to come up and show evidence for it, right? We're saying, I don't know. You're the one coming to us with a claim. So we're asking for you to provide evidence. And that seems only fair.
We're not necessarily saying that we know you're wrong. We're saying we know that we're not convinced you're right.
Yeah.
Those are different things.
And it's largely important. It's incredibly important because it's why we want to have a conversation with you. We have this show so people can call in, tell us what they believe and why. And if they convince us, we'll listen. I mean, it's that simple. We're not, being stubborn about it. We just want to have good reasons for believing the things that we do.
No, and I commend you guys for that. I think a lot of Christians miss that you do need the evidence. And Jesus said that people will know that you're my disciples by your love for one another. And I think there's people that have been turned off to Christianity because Christians aren't doing a very good job doing what their book tells them to do. And then unbelievers look at them and say, look, those people don't know God. And like, yeah, right, they don't know God because they're not obeying what God told them to do. I think
do you remember doing that in church?
Oh, all the time. And I would love to just take, if this were just my show and there wasn't an audience that was expecting other things, I would take that sentence and just dissect the shit out of it. Because in some areas I agree, in some areas I strongly disagree. I think that Christians are doing a very bad job if what they want to convey is love for all of humanity. But I also think that the Christians I agree with the most and surround myself with when I want to engage with Christians are those that neglect most of what the Bible says and follows their own morality and their own moral code in a way that is humanistic. So yes, and I guess for me. But this whole thing is interesting because we started off talking about slavery and we ended up way in left field. So is this where you wanted to end up? Is this the conversation you wanted to have? And Did we answer your
So I
question?
guess well, yeah, and I've never called in before. I think this is sort of a good get to know you call. So I sort of assumed that we were gonna go all over the place just to sort of touch on the main things that you guys like to touch on all the time, and then I was thinking maybe branch off to slavery, but I figured it was good to have a particular thing to bring up to begin the conversation.
Well, I appreciate you calling in. I enjoyed this conversation. And if you want to call back, what we generally tell people is if you could pick one claim that is the one that clinched it for you, that's the one we want to talk about. That's the interesting stuff for us, because if we're going to talk about a claim and then end up maybe debunking it, and that's not going to change your opinion or our opinion, then why are we having the conversation? So definitely call in again, but come with something that's really meaty, that's really juicy, that really, gets you excited, because that's something I'd be interested to talk about.
One other thing I'd be really excited to talk about.
I think next time I'll call in, I'll share my testimony if that would be okay.
Well, I think I would go back and watch earlier episodes where we talk about testimony beforehand. That way you can see kind of how we address that. What I'm really interested in, and we don't have to talk about this today, is how you get out of the no true Scotsman fallacy. There are plenty of Christians who call themselves Christians who do not advocate for love that way, or they think that the love that they need to show is tough love. And I would not say that they're not true Christians. They're just different.
Well, I actually appreciated that Adam didn't say they weren't Christians, just that they weren't doing a good job, which is important. You have to be able to hold your side accountable, right? There are plenty of atheists who do awful stuff, and we need to hold them accountable as fellow atheists, not say, oh, well, they're not even part of the group, so they're not my problem.
Well, but the thing is I'm sure there are Christians who would say, no, we are doing a good job. They're not, there's not an agreement.
That is the question. Yeah, exactly.
There's not an agreement on that.
How do you determine what a good Christian is? Because the people who are not doing Christianity the way you would do it still think they're doing it correctly. So then that becomes the conversation, which would be interesting. So yeah, call back and we'll have another conversation.
I appreciate shows like this where you can talk about things like this at length, because this isn't a time. I mean, these types of conversations are unfortunately not encouraged on Sunday morning.
Agreed. That's the point. That's what we want. We're glad that you found the show, and we look forward to you calling in again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good.
You too. All right. Who's next?
Can we talk to Emmet?
Sure. Let's talk to Emmet in Texas. Ooh, we got a lot of Texas callers today. Nice.
We do.
Emmet.
Nice. Hi, Emmet.
Hello.
Hi guys, how y'all doing?
Doing good. What can we help you with?
So I was the one in the chat at the C'est La Vie just before Christmas, and I had mentioned that I was a fairly recent, actually in-process deconvert from theology. In fact, I mentioned I was a church planter, and that...
Oh, I remember you. Yeah. Well, welcome to the show.
And yeah, you guys were so amazing with me. I had mentioned the purpose of this call today was kind of came out of what was in that chat, and you and Eric were really pleasant to me in the chat, and I could not wait for y'all to come back to another show so I could call. But the purpose of the call is that my brother did commit suicide in October, and it's the first time I'm dealing with death post theology. And on my own personal. And I'm really kind of having a bit of a challenge in processing that. In addition, my mother, who found him hanging, is now living with us. And she comes from a religious type of perspective, because that's pretty much where I came from. And it's been interesting because, she's having instances of, the dog barked this particular way, so that must be Eric's, telling us something or something. And I'm like really struggling with that. Eric ceased to exist. So, but anyway, that's pretty much it. I'm not here to have kind of a debate. Just want to get some insight from two people who I respect.
Absolutely.
I think the most important thing that I would want to stress is there's no wrong way to grieve. What you go through and the process that you go through is your process. And so this pain, this hurt, or, this moving back and forth when it comes to dealing with your mom and dealing with your own views on it, There's not a deadline, and there's not a wrong way to do it. Well, there are less healthy ways, but just know that we're not judging you, and we're not expecting, don't pretend that we're on your shoulder judging process your grief, man. That's important.
Yeah, that is hard. I have more processing of anger than anything else, and it's definitely inside of a context of being very religious, like evangelical tongue-talking, church planting, music leader, that world, working in Christian radio for 18 years, which is why I have an affinity with Seth Andrews, because Andrews and I are contemporaries. We were in Christian radio at the same time, so I actually remember him from there.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
but here I am now, years later, going, wow. Okay, it's really kind of complex. But anyway, that was part. I really appreciate you saying that, Eric, because I think for me the biggest issue is realizing that I have the feelings that I have, and I have to process them the way that I need to process them, and unfortunately, it sometimes is not healthy. And I'm noticing that it's like it ends up being a situation where it is not good for my mother, who processes more from an emotional perspective, and I'm coming from a little more of logic, reason, and cognitive, issues. So anyway, I don't know. I guess just that chat in there with you guys, I could not wait to have an opportunity to actually talk out loud and say out loud that I'm in the process of deconverting. That in and of itself is huge.
That is huge, and it is difficult to be going through that at the same time that you're forced in a very real and tragic way to deal with the reality of it, right? It's one thing to be all philosophical and be like, oh, well, in this theory, this is reality versus this. But when it comes
Let's
home,
talk about free will,
right? When it becomes a thing that you are having to deal with your family's having to deal with, that does add a layer to it that makes it ups the stakes a little bit. It makes it, you're playing on a harder level here, Emmett, than a lot of us have. And that's commendable. And the fact that you are pursuing this and being honest with your own thoughts, your own rationality while you're dealing with something this hard is very commendable. So I would say, kind of echoing what Eric said, but kind of extending that to your mom, right? And saying, hey, this is how I'm grieving. And it's hard. And for her, if she finds comfort in this and is not actively trying to harm you because I find that a lot of the time when I'm grieving, I've had to grieve alongside religious relatives. And there is a shared experience there, but that gets a little bit tenuous when they try and pull you into their version of grieving. So as long as you are able to hold that boundary with your mom, giving her that grace, giving her the space to deal with this as she needs to, and being there for her is going to be paramount here. So take your time. Wow. This is not a race. There is no end goal. This isn't a resolution where you're like, by May 2021, I'm going to have completely purged all of my past experience with, that's not realistic, and nobody's expecting that of you. So
I actually really like that.
Yeah.
That reminds me of when I used to run after school programs. I tell kids, hey, there's a time and a place for everything, and just be aware, have some tact. And as a non-believer, I'm sure that you would recognize that it would be rather tactless for somebody to use that as an excuse. Hold on, I was going to complete that. For someone to use that as an excuse to try and convert you. So be the example. Show that tact.
That was actually part of the challenge with the funeral itself.
Yeah.
Going back, and also during a COVID crisis where he was a very, very well-known person in Louisiana, and so.
But being that better person, it feels good, and it I highly recommend it. Be the better person.
Thank you.
And one other thing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Matthew Sutherland in the chat actually typed something in that I wanted to share. And it was a response to you talking about your mom hearing the dog bark. It says, it's nice that the dog bark made you think of Eric. It gave us both a chance to remember him. Thanks for sharing, Mom. As kind of right?
And I go in a whole different, because I go from being kind of hooked, and that actually is very helpful. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, we got an amazing audience. We really do.
We really do. And if you're interested in listening to this back and watching the live chat, we've got lots of love for you in the chat, lots of people empathizing with you, and it's a really great community. So
Absolutely.
as you continue to hopefully come to more C'est La Vie episodes and dive into that community, there's a lot of overlap. And the Talk Heathen community is here for you as well on Discord, on Facebook, and in these chats.
Definitely. And for anybody who's watching, thank you. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
For anybody who's watching, if you are grieving, if you are feeling alone, it's totally understandable. And there are people who can help. If you haven't called the Recovering from Religion Project, you can call in 184, I doubt it. Recoveringfromreligion.org is at the bottom. There's also a text, thing. There's all kinds actually, and they've been popping up on the bottom. Seculartherapy.org. It helps. It helps. All right, we ready?
Yeah.
You know what I realized?
What's that?
It's been a year since I got the moon wrong.
It has been a year. That was a grand start to season 4.
Oh, no.
Got the moon wrong.
All right. I kind of want to talk to
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk with Patrick.
Patrick in Florida. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. How are you all doing today?
We're
Doing
doing really
good.
well. What did
Yeah.
you want to talk about?
I feel this pantheism is a good alternative to like a classic kind of theism, and it was the faith of Einstein. And I think that even Kaku of string theory said that he found wisdom in the God of Einstein.
Sure.
And I'd like to talk on that a little bit. But also, one of my main points was I wanted to get in with, to you guys with, is a lot of atheists claim no evidence of God, do they not?
I would be happy to talk about that. Just really quickly to respond to that first pantheism statement.
Mm-hmm.
So, Patrick, would you rather me punch you in the face or kick you in the nuts?
Probably neither.
I agree. Just because there's an option that might be a little better doesn't mean that you have to pick one of them. So just remember that, the pantheism that you're looking at is not the only other choice. No,
I've considered them. I was an agnostic for well over 20 years of my life. But I was completely undecided.
So I've got a question for you, Patrick, and this will be clarifying for me and hopefully for the audience a little bit. When you say you were an agnostic, and then you clearly have seen something or read something or experienced something that moved you into pantheism, how would you define the main difference between being an agnostic and being a pantheist? Because for me, there is a lot of overlap, and a lot of it hinges on just the language and the way that people talk about the universe. Are there substantial claims of the supernatural that you accept now that you didn't before, or is it more of a semantic thing?
It's some may say it's semantic, but for me, it's a very spiritual experience being a pantheist, because I feel a connection to it all. I think being that we're elements of the universe, it's all connected, and that's very spiritual for me personally.
Well, I mean, if it feels good, it feels good. We can definitely respect that something makes you feel good, but if it feels good, does that mean that it's true?
Well, not necessarily. I'm more agnostic pantheist in that I'm not 100% sure of the claim. I just, in many ways, I got to admit, I like the claim, and, I imagine there is some confirmation bias there in that, but at the same time, I think that it is a valid possibility and a plausible, a plausibility
I guess that's my question, Patrick. You're saying it is a possibility. So I personally, I might get crucified for saying this. I don't have a problem with most pantheists. I don't think that unless it's tied to like medical woo that's going to get in your way in terms of like getting vaccinated or whatever, I don't really have a problem with talking about the universe in a more spiritual way. I think that for a lot of people that can be very helpful. It can be very calming, especially if they don't have the stigma that religion has put on ritual and on that kind of language. So personally, if you want to talk about us all being connected and all part of the universe, it sounds wooey to me. That's not the language I would use, but I don't see a problem with that necessarily.
I do.
That said, I'm curious what you mean by it, because you're referencing, we're all connected, we're all part of the universe. And if we were to take that in a certain way, I would agree with you, right? We're all part of the universe in that way. If you use set theory, that, kind of means that we're all in the same box. Cool. But then you say it is a possibility. What is that it?
Well, what I would say is there are synonymous correlations between the word God and the word universe, and furthermore, really the word Tao, which is one of the oldest faiths. But
now you get to jump in.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Look at this. Think about it this way, kid. I say this
Patrick,
real quick. Without beginning or end, and that's how God has been described. The universe has been described as infinite. That's just one of many that I have.
Yeah, Patrick.
Uh-huh.
What you're doing is you're using words that are so vague that you can fit anything in it. The saying is, it's great to have an open mind. Just don't have your mind so open that your brain falls out. And that's really important for this. When you're talking about concepts that are so vague, you open the door for people to use that language to cheat you, to lie to you, to take advantage of you. And that's why I think it's incredibly important. I understand, I get it. I want us all to be a part of this community, and I want to, build this world the best way that I can. And there are lots of things that are very, very nebulous, that can make me feel good. But when it comes to making a judgment about the world around me, I really don't want to use vague words. I want to be specific. I want to make sure that I understand what I'm talking about so I don't lead other people wrong, especially if those people trust me.
It is very specific.
So is God the universe?
God is without beginning or end. That is infinite.
Hold on. So are you saying God is the universe?
Yes, that's my claim, and I think it can be actually substantiated with science.
The universe existing can be substantiated by science, yes.
And if
consideration here is
being substantiated.
Are we just deciding to use the word God instead of universe, or are you saying that there are additional properties to the universe, like panpsychism, for example, that would
yes, exactly.
See, okay. See, there's the it. There's the it. I've been looking for the it, and that's it. Thank you. All right. So panpsychism. Do you know what that is?
We've talked about it.
Yeah. It's essentially the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, I'm going to dumb this down. The idea that everything is conscious to some degree, and there's kind of a proto-conscious field that permeates the universe, and we're all kind of tapping into it. So the universe, according to people who believe in panpsychism, is conscious to some degree and has maybe even some form of free will or will in addition to that. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yes, and actually genius Tesla, the genius of geniuses, said that essentially. He said he believes his brain is a receiver for which there exists a core. What is the core he's speaking of?
Patrick, can something be conscious without a brain?
Actually, yes, a single-cell paramecium exhibits consciousness with no brain or nervous system. Yes, actually, that's an actual fact. No.
This is good. I actually haven't approached it from this way. Okay, so your definition of consciousness is so vague that a single-celled organism is conscious?
That's what OR theory.
I'm asking you a question. Hold on, Patrick. I'm asking you a question. Is that the case?
That's what they deduced.
I'm asking not they. I'm asking Patrick. Patrick, is your definition of consciousness so vague that single-celled organisms fit in?
It's not my definition. It's science.
No, it's not. No. So are plants conscious?
OR theory.
Are plants conscious?
That's one of their postulates.
Patrick, are plants conscious?
Have you heard of Sir Roger?
Patrick! Are plants conscious?
Are plants conscious?
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say that it, you know, that's very debatable. But a single-celled
organism. You do realize that plants are made of cells. If we're just talking about cells wherein chemical reactions occur, then plants would be conscious just the same way. But I think what you've done is you've tossed the baby out with the bathwater. Are you conscious while you're asleep?
What would you say a conscious being is? Yes, I would say I'm conscious while I'm asleep.
That is a great question. Let's define consciousness. I would say that consciousness is actually this basket of related things, and it's what we call this group of things that we think of as consciousness. It can include things like self-awareness. It can include things like experience.
It's how we measure a man, so to speak.
God damn it. But ultimately, I think that the reason it's a basket is because it's emergent, right? It's the emergent property of having a brain and a spinal cord and the
one argument. There are like three in the arguments for consciousness: that it emerged, that it's always existed.
Okay, hold on. No. You want to talk about science? Let's talk about science. If I destroyed your brain, would you still be conscious? Or did you like always exist?
Well, that's a different, like quantum mechanics is now.
Don't talk about quantum mechanics. I'm talking about your brain. Let's talk about your brain. If I smashed your brain, would you be conscious?
Yeah, if you destroy your brain, you would destroy your consciousness.
Okay, but you're made up of cells, and those cells may not all die. So aren't you still conscious? Could you still vote then?
I mean, I'm not. I don't know about. You're talking about things that are theoretical at best now.
No, I'm asking you to define things so that we can determine whether or not you're using fucked up definitions for consciousness. Well, because if you're using a definition for consciousness that is that vague, then what you're doing is you open your mind so much, and it's good to have an open mind, but you don't want your brain to fall out. You don't want to make decisions and make conclusions about the universe around you with definitions that are so wibbly wobbly that you can fit any old thing in there, because that's how you get taken advantage of. And I think it matters. It matters that you understand the world around you, doesn't it?
Wobbly, and it's a legitimate theory in science, OR theory. If you read it, it's a legitimate theory, and that's part of the argument. Is that single organisms exhibit consciousness with no brain?
Yeah, that is a weird definition of consciousness that we're just not agreeing with. I don't care that somebody said it before. That cool story, bro. I want to know about the world we live in. I want to know if the world that we both inhabit.
Science.
I want to know things about this world.
Scientific theory.
Yeah.
It's OR theory. Are you familiar with it?
So let me try this again.
They say
Let me try. Hold on.
Comes from the
Patrick.
In our Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So let's go with hard solipsism, the idea that we're all in the matrix. That's a legit theory. So does that mean that it's true?
Yeah.
Should I believe that it's true?
String theory.
I asked you about the matrix. I asked you about hard solipsism.
I don't believe that. I don't believe we exist in a matrix.
Okay, but it's a legitimate theory, Patrick. There are people who've postulated. There are books. Have you read the books, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I've read some on it, but you know, it's just, of course, there are different theories, and string theory may not be true. You know, there's
but when you bring in things, so many different things like that, we don't actually get to have a conversation. It just falls in the mud. So we're trying to stick as close as we can, you know, to having this conversation through. You called in because you wanted to talk about consciousness, or at least I think that's the case. We talked about our definitions of consciousness. I gave you a definition. You disagreed with it. Cool. You responded by saying, well, this is a thing that's out there, right? I don't care. I just want to know about the world around me. And I think you do too. That's why I asked you about whether or not we live in the matrix, because it sounds like you don't think we do. I don't either. So if it's a theory that people have postulated, cool story, bro. I want to know about the world that we're in.
But I'm talking about legitimate science too, though. But it could be right or wrong. You know, I'm not saying I'm 100% certain that the universe is God.
So here's the deal, Patrick. When do you assume that a thing is true? Before or after you've determined? Before or after you've studied it?
I mean, usually it would be after you studied it, but
I agree.
Predicates that.
So why don't you study it? And then instead of saying, I don't know whether it's true or not, call in because you think it's true. Because then we can actually bounce against it. Otherwise,
I think
we don't really have anything to bounce back and forth.
100%. I think it's true. I'm just not 100%.
Okay. And what about our responses are you having a problem with?
I'm having a problem that you're saying that that's a wishy-washy definition of consciousness. That if a single-celled paramecium interacts with the world around it and responds to the world and can actually solve complex puzzles and mazes, which it can.
No.
Wait.
Patrick, no. No. So water has that same ability. Right? It interacts with the world around it, and it can do complex things. The interactions that it has are entirely chemical. We understand how those things work. It doesn't choose to boil at a certain temperature. That's not how that works. Water is not conscious. I think you might be talking about some definition of life that's weird, but consciousness in particular has a whole lot around it. And no, it seems like you're granting this personhood.
You know what it reminds me of?
Hmm.
It reminds me of the people who say that everything is made up of energy, therefore you can change your energy by wearing a certain stone, or you can sense the energy of another person. On one level, sure, using the term energy can be correct if we're talking about the process of energy as a scientific thing. Yes, everything is moving. We're all like part of that process, sure. Just because we agree to that does not mean that we believe that you can manipulate your energy or that anything that claims to automatically works, right? That's an equivocation fallacy. We're using the term energy in one sense here and then saying, well, because it's the same word, clearly it translates over. And I don't think that's the case. And I think that might be what's happening here, where we're using consciousness in this one, maybe scientific sense, right? Maybe some scientists have said, okay, this qualifies as consciousness. Cool, I'd have to look that up. But that being used does not then equivocate to the universe is conscious in the way that a God is, right? Like we're using that word in different ways.
Agreed.
And trying to fit it in the same place in the puzzle.
You know, actually other examples of that, we talked about this the other day, dusting. Dusting, you could dust a cake with powdered sugar, adding something on, or you can dust and take it away. You have completely opposite definitions using the same word. It's just contextually, it depends on the context.
It's the whole Amelia Bedelia thing. The reason that we like Amelia Bedelia is because when we say, Amelia Bedelia, make the bed, she comes out with a hammer, right? It's like, that's not what we mean.
Yeah.
But look, the Matrix check this out. The matrix theory, I don't necessarily believe it, but it is legitimate science and it is a valid claim based off the findings with the double slit experiment.
Yeah. So Patrick, go back and watch this episode. I think that there are a lot of things to absorb and to interact with. And if you get the chance to go back and work through those things, we may be able to continue. But I think we covered a lot today.
Also, and this is something that we might want to put out there as well. Sometimes being on a call, being on the spot and all of that is not the best way to convey your approach. So if you have all of the sources and you've got all this written down, throw that in the Discord, throw that in the Reddit that we've got, right? Our subreddit, right? It might be better to communicate this using, the written word and linking to your sources. And that way people can go through and investigate. But it might just be that we are not communicating well just because of the format as well. So I highly recommend that if you think you have an answer for this, that you dive into those websites that we have. The Facebook group would be great too, and let other people in the community kind of bounce that around.
Yeah.
Well, can I interject one last thing?
One last thing, and then we're going to move on to the next caller. If it's like a massive run-on sentence, then we'll probably not.
They said there was another pantheist in the queue, and I'd like to hear what they have to say because they maybe have presented it a better way than I have. And I feel that
Patrick,
I have some things written down here, but we can't get into it.
I appreciate it. That's what we were going to do.
Yeah, we're jumping over and talking to somebody else.
Yep.
Fair warning, we have talked to many a pantheist and have yet to be convinced, but who knows? Today might be the day.
Yep. Take it easy, man.
Thanks for calling in, Patrick.
I want to give one other example.
Okay.
Sanction.
Mm-hmm.
So does sanction mean to give permission or to deny permission?
I love linguistics.
Right? Yeah. Totally depends on the context. Okay. Let's move on. Oh, actually, I think it should be time for us to thank the patrons.
Actually, I think you're right. That might be accurate.
Yeah. So let me move over and... Well, all of the patron stuff is gone, so I'm going to have to pull it up. Let's move on and talk to Scott in California. Scott, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Love it.
Doing well. What do you want to talk about today?
Biggest fans.
Wow. All right.
Talking about pantheism again, naturalistic pantheism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They can explain everything that supernatural gods can explain only better. And that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. The reason that I bring that up is because I speak to theists all the time. You know, I debate with theists, and I'm not really a theist, but I am a pantheist, and that can be a little confusing, semantical for some people. Creates a little problem, but I find I can convey a message better using certain labels and certain words.
I agree. That's why the label atheist isn't for everybody. You know, some people refer to themselves as humanists or secularists. That's understandable. I would like to jump in here before we get too deep into anything and ask how your version, because I heard you put naturalistic pantheist before just now, and I used to call myself that as well. And I'm curious what you see the naturalistic doing there. How does that differentiate you from what other people might assume pantheism is?
Right, because a lot of people may assume some supernatural pantheism or something like that, or a conscious universe or something like that. For me, I don't think it's necessary for the universe to be conscious. I don't think it's necessary to, promote all these unnecessary properties to the universe. But when I say naturalistic pantheism, what I'm saying is that all these mysteries that we usually ascribe to God or supernaturalism, like consciousness, like origins, like other things, these can all be explained by natural processes. Every single mystery of the universe has been explained by some natural process. Every single one of them.
Interesting. So that's where we would probably branch off, because I would agree with you that probably every single thing that anybody has experienced in terms of anything that they claim to be supernatural has a natural explanation. I wouldn't go so far as to say they've all been proven already. I think that there's a whole realm of stuff that we don't have access to yet that science hopefully eventually will get to, but hasn't yet. So that's an interesting claim, and I'm curious how you came to the conclusion that everything, it sounds like you're saying that everything is already proven.
No. Everything that has been explained in science has
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So we're on the. So
we agree.
Yeah, Scott.
Supernatural.
Right. Scott, if you were to go over all of your views with me, would I define you as an atheist?
Probably. Most likely, yeah.
Okay. So here's a question. Somebody is watching the show. Right now, there are about 1,600 people watching the show. And they listen to you and they listen to me and they go, you know what? I really, really like that explanation that Scott gave. I'm not an atheist. I'm a pantheist.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be good?
That's a really good question, because let me put it to you this way. I'm part of a group on Facebook, for example, and there's a YouTube channel, Empathetic Atheist, and I debated a Christian last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I saw that.
However,
I didn't watch the whole thing, but I dropped in.
Yeah. You might check me out. I was debating Matt last night. But anyways, I kind of was talking about, when I was kind of framing my position and stuff like that, even before the show was aired, I said atheist, and then we got into the whole pantheist thing, and then everybody was saying, well, it seems like atheist is kind of a useless term for what you are with everything else that you're trying to talk about. It seems like pantheist suffices. But then there's other people that would say the opposite.
The exact opposite, yeah. And you're talking to two people who think it's the exact opposite, because the atheist point is so small. Mm-hmm. It allows for us to be able to fit everything else in, that needs to. So that's when we can start talking about secular humanism. That's when we can start talking about skepticism, empiricism, naturalism, right? All of those things, when we give those definitions instead of trying to lump them all together into something more nebulous, is number one, we give people a better place to be able to investigate for themselves. And number two, we make sure that we're not creating places for nut jobs to take advantage of that.
True, but here's the opportunity in either one of those labels, by the way. They can be good conversation starters, and they can be good engagement opportunities. For example...
Agreed. That's why we do the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even need to give an example. We just agree with you on that out the door.
So it sounds to me like you might have called yourself an atheist before you realized that if you marketed yourself as a naturalistic pantheist, you could have conversations you wanted to have better or more easily.
Yep, that's pretty much, and it depends, though. I would say depends on who I'm speaking to, but if I'm really honest in my experience, I would say that most Christians I speak to, I have better conversations marketing myself as a naturalistic pantheist.
Right, because of the smear campaign that has been run against atheists. And here's, I think, the only point where I think we disagree. Because honestly, if you are someone who accepts science and thinks that there are natural explanations for supernatural events, then we are 99% in agreement there. I am happy to stand alongside you in allyship for whatever. My only thing to maybe think on a little bit is, yes, I have no doubt that labeling yourself a naturalistic pantheist makes conversations with theists easier. And honestly, there's probably a very useful space for that, right? If you're going to enter in, it's kind of like a Trojan horse, right? It's like enter into these conversations in a way that doesn't already have their walls up. You might be able to make points that somebody who's calling themselves an atheist couldn't make with the same effect. So I see a place for that. My only concern here is that personally, I call myself an atheist, and I face that stigma precisely because of the stigma, right? And precisely because so many people have this negative stereotype. I don't want to run away from that. I want to run into that head on and prove them wrong by being a humanist, by being a caring, loving person who appreciates ritual and nature and all of these things that they would consider to be their purview, right? So that's my choice.
Right.
I can't make that choice for anyone else. But as you're considering what you're calling yourself, that might be worth thinking about.
Yep. The funny thing is I agree with you 100% on that. And in some cases, I see it necessary to just leave pantheism alone and let's just talk about atheism. Sometimes, if a Christian or some theist will not shut you down and wants to challenge you as an atheist because they have some argument, then I'll go with it. Because one thing that I don't like is that there's all these misunderstandings about what atheism actually means and what it actually entails. And so it's a good opportunity to fight the good fight for the label. It's just that with pantheism, if the goal is to get people to think more critically and to think more science, to give more credence to science and against supernaturalism, and these folks are, atheism is just the word that scares them to death for whatever reason, I'll invoke pantheism, naturalistic pantheism, to get in the door. And I've had so much success with that I can't really deny it. But at the same time, your point.
So let's do this. Let's do this.
Atheism, though.
Yeah, let's do this. There are lots of people who've called in that we've talked to who have that same kind of viewpoint, who are Satanists, who are Pastafarians, who have, and lots of versions therein.
Yeah. There are even secular Christians and Jews and Muslims as well.
Buddhists,
yeah. So
the important thing here is I understand that there's a need for it. Being on the show that we're on, obviously, I think it's clear my argument is on this side. I understand. I think that if we ever get to a point where we can get the world to where we're just arguing and nitpicking definitions like that, let's build that world together.
Absolutely. I would just say one other thing, though, and this is a little bit of a caveat to what I said earlier. The previous caller also called themselves a pantheist and believed in it seemed like some really weird woo. And they felt justified more so because they heard that another pantheist was on the line and they would set us straight. And so completely against your own, this isn't your fault, but because you use that term, they felt more comfortable in promoting their version of pantheism, which is and can be harmful. So in a nutshell, I think that is the only place where we have a little bit of a disagreement. But other than that, in terms of worldview, I think we're on the same page.
I think with the last caller, it kind of fell into something that's kind of normal. Is there's a composition division fallacy that's really easy to make. Whereas I understand what, I think what the guy was trying to say was, proto-consciousness, panpsychism is a legit scientific hypothesis. And then it's kind of easy to derive from that, therefore, when we die, we live on, or our cells are conscious that make us up. And then you run into this problem of, well, when I die, I become unconscious because I'm dead. My brain no longer works. But then I'm made up of these cells that are conscious, so I seem to run into a contradiction. But that's just because of the framing of what he was saying. It was kind of like a composition division fallacy. Whereas we are made up of cells that can be argued to be conscious little entities. We are not our cells. We are like a combination. We're an emergent property of all those cells, brain cells, and everything else that we're conscious of. So we depend on the natural world. We depend on our cells. We depend on our genetics. None of those are the self, because we have to define what the self is. So we run into a composition division fallacy.
Dude, we could have this conversation over
Yeah.
a beer like anytime.
But
I'd be
we gotta-
happy to. I think
Yeah.
I think we're pretty much on the same page there. I would say as you continue to have these conversations, it sounds like you're getting out there and having debates and interacting with people. That's awesome. Do some thinking about exactly what the implication is of using one word or another, which I'm sure you already are. But other than that, thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've got this mental image. Here's my challenge, because we're going to hop in the Discord afterward. We've got more calls, but I'd love to have, what is the meme? Somebody holding a brick. Is this a house?
Oh, yeah, essentially that's what that is.
Somebody called in about panpsychism.
Yes, we do have a more theist, though, that I would love to take before we jump to.
Let's do it.
Emmanuel.
Hello, this is Emmanuel.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, okay, this is Emmanuel from Texas. I've been wanting to call for a long time now. I'm going to try to be brief, but like I said, I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. You guys have had conversations prior to this that kind of more aligned with the subject that I'm going to approach. But we had a previous caller saying that his brother just committed suicide, and it's kind of related to that.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to try to go through this fast. I don't want to waste you guys' time, but it's going to sound like I'm going to go through my whole life story for a second, but I promise it won't take long. So I was born in Mexico in a Catholic family in like a small village. So we didn't even have cars. It was just like horses. And so it was very, very heavily Catholic. And so that was always a really big part of my life, was just being Catholic. And when I want to say 5 or 6 years old, 7, around there, I had a near-death experience. It was, the story supposedly says that I was declared dead for a while, but it was a result of a drowning. So from what I've read, children that have survived actually, dying because of drowning always have, or usually have, their brain cells died, or they have mental problems. So I think really I just had a near-death experience. I don't think I died, and I did have like a spiritual, I guess, experience that isn't really relevant to this conversation, but I could describe it for you if you like.
That's okay. You had an experience that you take as spiritual or supernatural.
Right. So again, I don't think I actually died or I met God or anything like that. I just had a near-death experience that I interpreted as being spiritual and affected my life in that manner. So for a long time, I think when I was a kid, I would really just love thinking about heaven. Which I know it's kind of weird, but I would kind of fantasize about, just how amazing heaven would be. And I think that kind of put my mind in a kind of a, I was always just kind of thinking, what they used to say about me is, he's thinking about the moons and the stars. And, the kids are over there, talking about, sports or whatever. So when I was about 13 years old, I hit this really, something happened in my mind, and I got very, suicidal. And, if you know about Catholicism, that it's a mortal sin.
Can I help you summarize?
That's
can I help just a little bit?
Murder someone, and you'll never have the chance to ask for forgiveness, so you'll die with that sin, basically.
Yeah.
And so,
hey, Emmanuel.
Whole year from when
Emmanuel.
Yep.
If we had more time in the show, I'd want to continue, but can I help you a little bit here?
Yeah.
It says,
go ahead.
Sure. No, that's okay. You're sharing a lot, and actually that lays a groundwork for what you wanted to talk about. What it says in the notes is believing in God negative if it brings about positives in your life? And it says that you still consider yourself a believer. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So let's take that thinking and let's apply that elsewhere. If believing a thing is negative, even if it brings about positive change, right? So radiation therapy, negative or positive?
Positive.
Got it. Should I go get radiation therapy tomorrow? Should everybody get radiation therapy?
Cancer, no.
No. So something is contextually very important. So let's make sure that we're understanding the context there. And then let's move on and talk about, I think the noble lie is what I usually go to. And have you heard about the noble lie?
No, I haven't.
Okay, really easily, it was this idea that the peasants, this was in a society that didn't have growth. It was a caste system. And because of that, you had the peasants, and then you had the working class, you had the upper class, you had nobility, and you had had royalty. And what this idea was, okay, well, let's just tell the peasants that in their soul, there's copper. And the next class up, well, actually, the reason why they're this working class, or this artisan class, is because they have iron in their souls. And the higher up you get, really, you have gold and silver.
Right.
And
so on.
Yeah, what those were reasons to convince people to stay in this caste system. And so the noble lie was this idea that even if we know it's not true, we should tell them, because people won't revolt. People will just fall in line. And isn't that better for the world?
Right. So it's kind of, it's a decision between what is good for the individual as opposed to what is good in general or for society as a whole.
Yeah. And really, ultimately, I think that the view is, and should be, that we want to give people as much true information about the world. We want people to be able to decipher as much as they can about the world correctly as possible, because I don't want to be in the position where I'm being this nanny and trying to make the decisions for other people because I think they're too stupid to make it for themselves. And so I want to make sure that they have.
Completely agree. Right. And just to make sure that I am understanding you, that's kind of like the idea in India, where the higher caste classes will say, well, you must be having this, or you must be in poverty because you did something wrong in the previous.
Exactly.
I get that. I kind of if I could just for a second just keep going. I understand that I guess I can't really separate the idea of God from the individual. I can do that with church, with the church and larger theologies. If you're talking about specific religions, I guess it's just it's a little bit of a personal question, like I was saying, and it kind of does have to do a little bit with suicide. And I think, and I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. I'm not challenging anyone. I'm kind of just asking for a little bit of your opinion and your help to kind of illustrate my thinking. So for a long time, for when I was 13, I felt like I needed to find out if God is real. That was like a practical question that I needed the answer to. Like I had to find it somewhere, because if he was, then I could commit suicide and I wouldn't be burning in hell for the rest of my life. And if he wasn't, then I could just commit suicide and I would be comfortable, And but after that year of kind of contemplation and really thinking about everything, I guess I don't have any logical, reasonable arguments to make for the existence of God. I just have like a personal, I guess.
Yeah.
Just like a personal to that belief. Now, I feel like it messed me up. Like I feel like it helped me in that moment, in the sense that it made me hold on. Like once
Emmanuel, I'm gonna jump in here real quick, because we are coming up on the end of time, and I want to make sure that I address what your question is, at least according to what we've got on our call sheet. That story that you told us just now is exactly the reason why believing in God is negative, even if it brings positives.
Yeah.
Do you know the reason why the church decided that, made up specific rules about suicide and why it was bad? because they knew that they were painting such an amazing picture of the afterlife that all of their followers would just kill themselves to get there. And so they had to stop that from happening by telling people that suicide was a sin. So the fact that you even had that conversation with yourself and had to use religious thinking in order to get yourself out of that funk, and I'm so glad you did, is a negative. You can have positive influences that will help you with things like suicidality or depression or any kind of mental health that don't come along with those stigmas, right? There are healthier ways to get these things that don't have all that baggage. If you didn't believe that heaven existed, if you didn't wonder if God was real, then that would have been taken off your plate as you were dealing with this suicidality, and you wouldn't have had to loop that in and make it that much more complicated and maybe even alluring. So I think the point that we try to make is not that there are no positive experiences that happen in religion. There are. We're trying to say that those things can exist outside of religion and not come with all of the baggage and all of the potential harm that is also there.
Yeah. I'd like to add as well.
I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, I feel you, man. I've fought clinical depression for pretty much my whole life. So I get it. Just speaking to you personally, another piece that a lot of people don't get is this idea of purpose. And I think that ties in a lot with what V said. You know, if you've been sold this false bill of goods that God has an ultimate purpose for you, then finding out that God doesn't exist means that ultimate purpose you were sold all of a sudden is not in the equation. But finding and giving yourself purpose, you know, realizing, hey, I can set goals for myself and achieve those goals, not because some deity is going to put me over his knee and spank me, but because that's what I want to do. Let me tell you, man, it is so rewarding. It is so, so rewarding. So if you haven't, you know, or if it's something that you're working with, or if you're working with a therapist, hopefully you are, I encourage you to work on purpose, because it's not something that you need to wait around for.
No, man, I you know, that's something I did need to hear, and it goes exactly with, you know, I kind of just wanted to put a little warning out there. I think part of where my thinking messed me up was, you know, I believed in God, and, you know, I believed at some point, you know, he understands. He won't send you to hell for this or that just on a whim. But I think what messed me up was I always thought that there was some kind of moral mechanism, some kind of system in place behind the curtain that will kind of say, oh, well, Emmanuel's been a good guy, or so-and-so has been good. They deserve this. And so
I always view it as like a cosmic ledger.
Not really, right. Yeah, and like you said, you know, choosing your own purpose and then going out there and not relying on some invisible hand to kind of guide you or give you this, give you that. So yeah, you got me there the faster way, I guess.
Well, good, and definitely thank you for calling in.
Yeah.
We don't often get callers who put a trigger warning before what they have to say, and you did, which is incredibly kind. So, Emmanuel, send in love rings. Take care, buddy. Thank you for calling in.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and you guys are doing really important work, and I hope you keep doing it.
Thank you.
Do it as long as we can.
That makes me so happy. Thank you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel still considers himself a believer, but he's in our community, damn it. I mean,
absolutely.
Welcome. Whether you decide to call yourself an atheist or not, you're one of us.
I think because we still have to thank the patrons.
Oh, shit. You're right. Oh, you're so good. Okay. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right. We're going to thank our top 5 patrons. Our top 5 patrons this week are Eric Tweet, Desert Heathen, Bethany P., Jay Friedman, and Ward Knipling. V has 2 more that you just love saying their names.
Balaam's Donkey and Dingleberry Jackson.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone else who supports us. This week in particular, if you're watching on YouTube, there is a fundraiser right there at the top. We are supporting Black Nonbelievers. So if you donate there, it's going to be going to Black Nonbelievers. Thank you so much, because a huge piece of our mission is to put eyes where they belong and to highlight organizations that are doing good work. And Mandisa and Black Nonbelievers are doing good work. So cheers. All right. So what do we think? Do we want to take this call now, or do we want to take it maybe in Discord?
I think this would actually be a very interesting conversation for Discord.
Okay. Jeff,
So-
stay on the line.
Yeah, let's talk with you there.
That said,
We have an exciting guest next week.
we do.
I'm
We do.
very excited for this guest.
Me too.
Can we spoil it? Can we spoil it,
Um.
please?
Yeah.
So, about a year ago, actually it was almost exactly a year ago, because it was when we were first starting to call in from your old studio, your old place, right during the beginning of quarantine. We had this caller call in, and he was asking how to best moderate a conversation between a friend who was being abused by their family and the family. And he calls in, and he's awesome and like super energetic right
Really
away.
nice,
Really
yeah.
cool guy. And
We got to talking to him a little bit after, other than that. And all of a sudden, they're just popping up. All of my friends are
all
just
of a
like,
sudden,
oh, hey, this guy. And everywhere we look, he starts a YouTube channel.
can't escape this guy.
No!
He's omnipresent.
And when he reached out, he was like, hey, could maybe be on Talk Heathen. We said, you're just starting out. Make sure that you've got content out there. That way, when we point people your direction, they have stuff to watch.
Generally, we like to wait a year before bringing on new people to the show. But this guy has been doing this for about a year now.
Yep, he's hitting his year anniversary very soon. You want to give him the name?
We're both going to be on that, by the way.
Yes.
We're having Ethan Michael on the show. Your friendly neighborhood atheist is going to be hosting alongside Eric Murphy next week, while I will be giving a lecture/sermon at the Seattle Atheist Church.
Remotely.
Unfortunately, I would love to be in the Pacific Northwest right now. Oh my God. But we are very excited. I was very excited to hear that, and I know I will be watching that show along with all of you. So.
Yes. So make sure that you tune in for your friendly neighborhood atheist. He's the one who is freaking out in the live chat right now. We love you. You've earned it.
Quite excited to have you on.
Definitely. That said, this has been the first episode of season 5. Vee, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
For all of you who are watching, whether you believe or don't believe, if you're doing good work, if you are out there, putting yourself in danger so that the rest of us can be safe, thank you. You're doing your job. We're going to continue to do ours by limiting our interactions, by wearing a mask. And we just want to say thank you. And that doesn't matter what you believe. If you're putting in the work, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't believe, even if you don't call yourself an atheist, if you call yourself a pantheist, if you call yourself a
Satanist,
a Pastafarian,
an atheist witch,
or any other,
if you don't think a God exists,
or if you're doubting, welcome. It's okay. We made this place for you. We want to have these conversations so that you can join us, and we're building a community together. And for those of you who do believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. See you next week.